Welcome back to About News Network. We're actually working on Volume 3, Chapter 2. And now we have 12 new words that we're going to be working on to help you expand your vocabulary universe. If we can take a quick look at our word storage memory system for today, we see that we've actually lined up 12 new words with their synonyms as well as word to picture to word association, and to help you increase your memory of these words. And we've also attached them to number 1 through 12 storage bins in our storage bin system, which is our memory power system to help you increase the retention of these new words. We go over the definition. Before we actually get into today's lesson, just wanted to take a quick look. As I mentioned, we're going to be spending a lot more time on our vocabulary recall memory cheat sheet. This actually uses cues from sample sentences, and here we have filled in. We were slowly progressing, allowing our students to actually fill in over the course of the last 2 or 3 lessons to fill in their own answers for Volume 2, Chapter 8 and Volume 2, Chapter 9. We've gone ahead and filled them in so that we can actually study really quickly. The goal of this exercise is actually to assign mentally the bold word in the center of each rectangle to the 2 keywords from actual sample sentences that we worked on in each lesson. Of course, the link to each lesson is in the video description box if you don't recall the sentence. But your brain is going to recall the story of the word. We keep repeating that because it's very, very important. The brain likes to map new words to stories, and that's the way that you actually recall. It also likes to map them to pictures so that you actually create almost like small little castles within your own brain that houses all of these different words. So you could actually be in a situation where you're falling asleep and you'll recall the rectangle and you'll recall the 2 keywords. The keywords will actually trigger memory of the sentence, which will help you to trigger the memory back to the word cloud storage. You may even remember the color of the cloud that the word was actually in, and that will trigger memory back to its synonym, and so forth, and even possibly the storage bin along the human body that we use there as an illustration. So we're actually just using the mechanism of the mind to actually trick itself into remembering the word. So very, very quickly, cosmopolitan, flight attendant, travel. If you recall, that was a sample sentence that had to do with flight attendant actually entering into the field of travel because he or she wanted to have a cosmopolitan view of the world, which is a worldly view. Denote, that had to do with a sample sentence where the logo designer was actually working on a design, and there are 3 specifications by the client as far as what the logo was to denote, in this case quality as well as excellence. Desultory, the actor was very good at the craft but didn't practice, so it was a desultory situation. Dissonance, harsh sound that piano teachers are accustomed to. And here it is that I don't actually have the sample sentence in front of me, but I'm able to remember the sample sentence simply because of the 2 keyword triggers. And we try to frame our sample sentences so that there's a unique story that you'll recall when you actually go over. If we go to Volume 2, Chapter 8, we can actually see a fastidious chef marinade. That had to do with the chef paying meticulous attention to the spices that were used in the marinade for meat and seafood. Intrinsic was the nature of the diamond with respect to the applications. Let's see, resignation, puissance, corporate puissance. Resignation and corporate were the 2 keywords, and that had to do with the Great Resignation and how the actual word used in that sample sentence, if actually remembering it word for word, is disdain for corporate puissance, which has to do with corporate power. We go to Volume 2, Chapter 9, affectation, influencer, and specifically, I remember the sample sentence had to do with an Instagram influencer who travels to another country and through affectation actually uses a fake accent to personify the people that are actually there in that resident country. Disjointed sheriff is actually puzzled by the disjointed stories from various neighbors as actually how the crime for crime investigation. Grating, that had to do with a grating tone from a woman who was in Walmart, who was actually cursing, grating. And if I recall, I think we used a grater with a few lemons next to the grater as a picture word association. So here we go. As we take a look at the word itself, it will take us back to the lesson and further ingrain the wording. Languid had to do with a sample sentence where the fitness instructor was puzzled by the number of languid or very lethargic beginners who showed up for the first class. Propitiate, and that had to do with Prince Charles taking the role of king, and Tyro. That specifically had to do with a that had to do with a person who thought he or she had experience in social media and wanted to apply for a social media manager job, but truth be told, unbeknownst to him, he was actually a novice when it came to the actual field. So there we go, the true power of the vocabulary recall cheat sheet. We did provide recall cheat sheets in previous lessons that were unfilled out for previous chapters. We definitely recommend going back. As we do this over and over again, it ingrains the word in your memory because you associate the word to the cue words and the story of the word. Alright, so here we go. We actually have 12 new words we're working on. Augment or enlarge. This is in the HEM blue group, hair, ear, and mouth group. We're associating augment, construe, and eclectic to the blue clouds, and we see augment has to do with enlarge, and picture word association has to do with augmented virtual reality, which is an up and coming area. Virtual reality of augment, enlarge, to make large, and with those units, people actually put their cell phones into the unit and they can actually see it through experience augmented virtual reality. So augment. We actually assigned it to the hair storage bin because your hair is of all the things on your body. The hair encompasses your entire head. For those of you who have hair. So the next word is actually construe, which means translate or to interpret. And this is assigned to the air storage bin. The air, it's in the blue cloud. Translate is a synonym, interpret. And so if you want to make a word association to the storage bin, that will be quite all right. Air to construe, and you're translating, and you see the screwdriver and the tools there. Eclectic, universal, and that is to actually select the best of everything. So eclectic. So you can associate it with the mouth storage bin. So we have 3 new picture to word associations, and we have 3 new words that are now taking the place of in the blue group. And if we take a look here, we can actually see that we're going to a different group, and that's going to be effigy, grouse, and ingrate. And as we take a look here, we can see that that's the orange SSE group. Effigy, statue. You can associate the prominence of the shoulder with the statue, because that's usually what stands out with respect to a statue representation of a person. Effigy. And we have grouse, which is stomach. You can make an association of growling to your stomach, and which is a good association because in this case it is a complaint or complain. So grouse is attached to the stomach storage bin. Let's see how some of these words are actually used. Augment, when you use our word cloud storage memory system coupled with our vocabulary recall keyword sheets, your memory will be greatly augmented. Construe, when I informed her that her attire was mildly inappropriate for work, she construed my comment as an insult. Construed, verb meaning interpret. And an eclectic, the new Thai restaurant has an eclectic menu. Diners love the range of pad Thai and spicy soup entrees. So there, when we're building our vocabulary cue memory recall cheat sheets, we can take two words that allow us to quickly remember the structure and the story of the word being used in these sample sentences. It's very, very important so that you can actually start constructing your vocabulary recall cue word sheets, which will firmly ingrain the vocabulary that you're learning, and you can actually come back to them periodically to further ingrain the word to the point where you'll actually see the rectangle with the word in the center in bold with its two cue words. So we're actually looking at effigy, grouse, and ingrate. Let's see how they're actually used. We have statue, someone complaining. Actually, complaining. Ingrate has to do with thankless or ungrateful. Let's see how they're actually used. Effigy. The news report featured effigies of the president as a mock dummy being burned during the protests are disturbing. So that sentence should really read, the news reports featuring effigies of the president as a mock dummy being burned during the protests are disturbing. And a lot of times, especially in international countries that are protesting U.S. policies, they will burn a dummy covered by a U.S. flag, unfortunately. But in this case, we see that this is a noun, a representative of a person. Grouse, during the, and grouse we know because we now assigned the word grouse to the stomach storage bin, and it sounds like a growling stomach. So we know that just by word association now, during the City Hall meeting, members of the community stated their main grouse about the indoor mask mandate. Grouse, complain. It can be a verb or a noun. Ingrate. Her young son was such an ingrate. Here it's being used as a noun. His mother made breakfast for him every morning, and he never bothered to thank her at least one time. Noun meaning ungrateful person. So if we go back to our memory system, we can actually see a screaming child, thankless, ungrateful, and that has to do with ingrate. And then we see, oh, there's a good word to association. Ingrate. We do know that when our close our elbow, we actually can ingrain our finger into our elbow when we actually close. So that is a good way to remember the word ingrate, because you're actually ingraining your thumb or your index finger into your elbow, which is the storage group for the elbow. Ingrate. In this case, it means ungrateful person, but you're associating the elbow to ingrate, and it means thankless. So hopefully you'll make that association. So now we're in the red group: inquest, jocular, and pervasive. Inquest has to do with a probe. Usually it's a legal inquiry. Let's see how it's actually used. Inquest. Following the murder of the civil rights attorney, the community eagerly waited for the results of the inquest. Noun meaning legal inquiry. So we are seeing that it's an arm and inquest. So one association you can make is to the arms of justice, to the arm of the storage bin. So that has to do with inquest or probe. Our next word in the AWH, which is the arm, wrist, hand group, red group. Try to remember that inquest, jocular, and pervasive are in red clouds. Jocular has to do with jolly, joking, and playful. Let's see how it's actually used in a sentence here. My neighbors have such a jocular dispositions, have such jocular dispositions. Marty and Jen are the life of our parties. Adjective meaning joking or playful. So your cue words could easily be Marty and Jen, because now you've attached Marty and Jen to being party animals for the neighborhood. So jocular. So that would be a good way to construct a vocabulary recall cue memory worksheet. Jocular in the center with Marty and Jen as your two cue words, or you could just put neighbor and Marty, and that should allow you to quickly trigger what the word jocular means. In this case, it's playful and joking. And then we have pervasive, and pervasive is usually a synonym. Its synonym is usually common. We do have the picture of the world there, and that means it's existing everywhere. And that's simply what it means. It exists everywhere. The criminal element is so pervasive throughout Miami that many residents have decided to relocate to West Palm Beach. Adjective meaning existing throughout. Existing throughout. So there, that rounds out our red group. Let's do a quick exercise and see if we can recall. We like to cover the left hand side, and we have, if we can recall our blue, we have augment, and then we have construe, and then we have eclectic. Those are our three words in the blue group, and they are assigned to enlarge, translate, and universal. And then we have effigy, and then we have grouse, which is attached to the stomach storage bin, and then we have ingrate in our orange group, and that's a statue, because effigy is statue, representation of a person. Grouse, growling, complaint, and then we have ingrate, which is a thankless child. So there we actually see our first six. If we can actually cover the right side, augment, large, construe would be translate, eclectic would be universal, effigy, statue, grouse, complaint, ingrate, thankless. And we can go back and forth with your left hand, and you can go back and forth with your right hand, and this will really force your brain to map to its respective synonym or the word or even the picture and the word definition. And it's a really good way for you to create scenarios in your mind where you're actually forcing your brain to actually remember these words. And furthermore, they'll be coupled with the sample sentence, so you have a pretty good idea as far as what's going on with these words. So let's see. Phlegmatic, apathetic. It's not easily emotional. Sorry for the typo. Not easily emotional. And we do have a picture of an American soldier, the epitome of bravery and courage, or a soldier there. And so not easily emotional. And that is the knee group. And then we have, let's see how it's actually used in the sentence. Phlegmatic, one of the reasons John was promoted 3 times had to do with his phlegmatic disposition. Adjective meaning not easily emotional. So there we have the first 10 words that we're focusing on. And let's see. Propitiate. Let's go ahead and pronounce that word properly. And it's going to be propitiate, appease, attempt to satisfy. So propitiate, appease, attempt to satisfy. And in this case, the sample sentence is propitiate, and we can actually see here that propitiate, the flight attendant made every effort to propitiate the passenger. However, a fight escalated. Fortunately, that's a situation in the air at this time here in the fall of 2021. Severe amount of in-flight escalations that are causing forced emergency landings. Um, so we do see verb meaning attempt to satisfy. The flight attendant made every effort to propitiate the passenger. However, a flight escalated. Let's spend a little bit more time mapping this word to our brain. It means to appease, attempt to satisfy, um, propitiate attached to the ankle storage bin. And then we have stratagem, which is stratagem, a gimmick or scheme to deceive. Let's see how it's actually used in today's cancel culture. This sample sentence is very appropriate. It was inconceivable for Jeffrey to get this far in the candidacy, only to bow out of the race due to tweets from last year. It seems like a stratagem by the media to defame his character. So in this case, it appeared to be a scheme to deceive. Stratagem. And we do see here that it's attached to the foot storage bin. A gimmick, a picture to word association, a deceitful, deceiving looking image there. So that's for the last few. Let's see if we can do that right block off. And we see common, existing everywhere, pervasive, apathetic, that had to do with phlegmatic, appease, and that had to do with propitiate. And then we have stratagem, which is gimmick. And then we cover the right side, and we're going to try and make an association with to the synonym pervasive, and that's common or universal. Phlegmatic, that's going to be apathetic, not easily emotional. Propitiate, which is to appease, and stratagem is a scheme or gimmick. So there we have the 12 that we're working on here in Volume 3, Chapter 2. We took a look at the sample sentences. Let's just quickly scan this vocabulary recall cheat sheet. Just go over words that we didn't cover. Oh, La Nina, follow. Sounds like we made sure to make the association with shallow, and with shallow ponds there's very little life there. And in this case, fallow has to do with the fact that the fields will remain fallow as a result of lack of rainfall, as a result of La Nina moving in. So that was a trigger for us remembering what the word fallow means. Moors, M-O-R-E-S, that had to do with those who are settling in a new country, and you may violate cultural norms or mores. So we see immigrant and cultural there, and that was a sample sentence, and that allowed you to really appreciate the word itself and what it means and the context. Ruminate, sullen state or laid off were the cues, and that had to do with staying. That sample sentence had to do with staying in residing in a sullen state as a result of a layoff from your job, and that was ruminating in your mind, which just means staying in one mostly a depressed situation, depressed mode as a result of an action. Impecunious is a very looks a little bit more difficult, but if you remember the cues, musician and poverty, you'll remember the cues in the sentence had to do with impecunious childhood or impecunious memories of childhood, and that had to do with poverty, and that had to do with wealthy musicians who often recall very serious situations of poverty when they were growing up as children, and now now that they're worth tens of millions of dollars, they're able to reflect on impecunious poverty situations relating to their childhood, which is very common among musicians. Another one would be that we haven't looked at yet would be let's see, Vanguard, forefront investments. and Vanguard pretty much means the leader of the pack. And with Vanguard, if I recall, we actually used the picture of a lion in the picture to word association because he's a leader of the pack. In this case, Vanguard is a forefront with respect to investments. So that was a solid picture to word association. So there we have our latest 12 words that we're actually working on for today, Volume 3, Chapter 2. We're spending a lot more time on the vocabulary recall cue sheets. That will simply help you to use the different techniques that we've used here to actually help ingrain the vocabulary for whether it's TOEFL or SAT or any other standardized exam that is actually coming up. We hope this is very helpful for you, and by all means, definitely use your vocabulary recall sheets. You can actually fill them out in this manner, and then go back using the links in the video description box to actually take a look at the sample sentence that we used. It's very, very important for you to actually focus on the story of the word, because you're doing a brain mapping to the actual definition, to the cues, and a lot of times you'll see this word, you may be reading, and you may not remember it quickly offhand, but you may remember the word appearing in a rectangle, and the picture of you seeing that word, or the image in your brain of that word appearing in a rectangle, may trigger you to remember the two keywords, and then the sample sentence will flash back in your brain. When the sample sentence flashes back to you, there's a good likelihood you may even remember the picture to word association in an exercise, and then that maps it back to the synonym and to the word, and then the whole shebang, and you'll be able to recall how that word is used. So here we are using very, very powerful memory systems to ingrain the word, and we basically allow the process to trigger itself so that you'll actually remember the context of how the word is used. And that's the most important way to remember a word forever, is to remember the story of the word and not just the definition of the word or even the synonym. Create a story around a word and you'll remember the word forever. So I hope that you appreciate this Volume 3, Chapter 2 of our word cloud storage system, and we'll continue to produce these videos as we get further and further into our list of 500 or 600 or even more words that may appear on a TOEFL SAT. This is a great way to ace modern business English. If you're hoping to write an ebook or you're publishing, this is a great way to stretch your vocabulary so that you can communicate your message more effectively. There are just multiple applications to a lot of these techniques and strategies for remembering your vocabulary. Well, thank you so much for tuning in to Bound News Network for Volume 3, Chapter 2. Please hit the notification bell, and by all means, we hope you enjoyed this latest chapter. We sure enjoyed bringing you these 12 new words and their synonyms and their picture word associations, and also their sample sentences, and going over with you the very, very important vocabulary recall sheet, word sheets, and start constructing them for yourself, even for the previous chapters, and keep them handy so you can always refresh yourself and refresh your memory, further ingraining the definition of these words. So thank you for tuning in to Bound News Network. We hope you have a wonderful day, and of course smash that notification bell for our next presentation, our next chapter of Volume 3. Have a great day.